Hello and welcome to Books Corner. I'm Ashwin Ahmad, and I'm very pleased to be in conversation with scholar and former ambassador to Syria, Rajendra Abhyankar. Today, we are going to be discussing his book, Syria, the Tragedy of a Pivotal State, and the prospects for peace in the country. Ambassador Abhyankar, very pleased to welcome you to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Now, you've spoken about the importance of Syria at great length in your book. There are 4 UN Security Council nations and regional powers in West Asia, all on the ground in Syria. Now, what makes Syria so important?
Well, I think the first thing about Syria is that over the ages, Syria has always been a country where people found an opportunity to settle their differences. It's been going on for generations. And so also this time we see that since 2011, it is the same story. We have a situation in Syria, such a unique situation, for the simple reason that it is a pivotal state. It is a state which determines the future trend of the of what will happen in the region. And this arises from the fact that Syria, and particularly Damascus, instead of looking towards the sea, which it should in the normal course, looks inwards. And it looks inwards, and therefore it has become like a closed cocoon where people come and settle their differences. So that is what makes Syria important. Now, why is it actually intrinsically important? It is because it has nurtured the 3 religions of Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. It has been the home of all these 3 religions. Then it also sits at the confluence of 4 different cultures: the Turkish, the Arabic, the Iranian, and the Hebrew. And you can actually see the differences when one crosses borders towards any of these.
Sir, now I want to come now to the leader, Bashar al-Assad. Now he has, I think, according to your book, 90% of Syria is under his control. How has he managed to survive as a leader? As you spoke about, the Arab Revolution, I know you don't like that term, took place. But at the same time, he has managed against major players, Turkey, Iran, Russia, United States, etc. So how has he managed this, and what do you see as his future going forward?
The important point is that Bashar Assad has become extremely good at exploiting the divisions amongst his opponents, both on the battlefield and on the diplomatic table. And that's very important because his role has been quite important. And even more so has been the studied work or studied uh, action of the government in making constructive use of the glory of Syria's past. The museums, the archaeological sites have all been upgraded, have been made, uh, have been shown as the mark of Greater Syria. Um, Going back, of course, in a way, arrogating to itself the idea of going back in history that we are representatives of this old civilization. But it has been important to keep the people on their side. So that is really, these are the reasons why Assad has been able to survive.
So now I want to come to the major actors. The United States, though Obama drew red lines regarding chemical weapons, they are a minuscule presence in terms of troops in Syria. Now, how likely is US President Joe Biden to change that? Is the US likely to show more interest in Syria? And number three, what does it mean for the other three major actors, Turkey, Iran, and Russia?
Yeah. Let me first mention about what is likely to be the attitude of President Joe Biden on the whole situation. Now, I think that Biden also would like to get the American troops out of Syria, something that should have happened a long time back because for the moment there are only 500 troops there, which doesn't make anyone happy, neither the troops nor the government nor the Syrians. And there's not much that 500 troops can do. But if you look at and that's the situation. There is still an American base in in Syria, which is being guarded by these troops. But as far as Biden is concerned, as you can see, he has now just yesterday said that he's ready to negotiate with Iran if it wants to. Now, considering that Iran has a major presence in Syria, uh, I think in that context, we may see a certain, probably, I don't know whether it will be an escalation of American troops to fight Iran in Syria. That seems kind of unlikely. But that is an area where which could provoke a little more activism by Biden in Syria. So that is my reading of what the situation is. I also believe that Biden will be uh, in, equally sensitive to the use of any further chemical weapons by Syria. My own estimate is that it's unlikely that any chemical weapons will be used because right now what is happening is that in Idlib you have the Syrian army confronting the Turkish army, and Turkey is trying to carve a 3 mile buffer zone inside Syria where it claims it wants to settle at least 2 million of the 3.5 million refugees that are in that country. So what they actually do, we don't know, but we know that Turkey has very clearly made out that they want to have a future, I mean, a role in the future. So that's what.
Sir, I'd like to you mentioned ISIS. Now, all the major players say that they want a war against ISIS, the but Syria is so complicated that it is one of the many groups that many splinter groups within the country. So, how do you see the war against ISIS going at all? I mean, is there any probability or any likelihood of controlling ISIS?
Well, I think there is because look at what has happened. I mean, ISIS at one time actually had two provinces from Iraq and two provinces from Syria, and it became a mini state which was probably bigger than the United Kingdom, and they were running it, but uh, they lost it. They lost it completely, and mainly because of American and other action against them. Now, today the situation is that there are about 3,000 ISIS fighters who have gone back to their original missionary goals, which is to spread Islam. And there are a good number of them, therefore, in the deserts in Syria. Now, right now, there doesn't seem to be a concerted effort to finish them off. That I mean, we can see that there is neither the Syrian government is trying to finish them off, nor is anybody else trying. But that will have to be done, at least in terms of their presence on the ground, because they are not going to stop, especially getting in, I mean, sponsoring terrorist attempts in the West, like they have done in the past. So I think sooner or later that pressure is going to build up. They are not going to come back and take any territory, but this is a very insidious way in which they can actually try and regain something or the other. There's another thing that there were a large number of Europeans who went and joined the ISIS. Now, how many? I mean, my figure is that I think there are about still 300 to 400 foreigners still with ISIS right now. Now, that is the other issue, that what happens to them. So, I think ISIS is not gone. It is still needs to be dealt with. But in the end, I mean, in the end, supposing every ISIS member is killed and there is not a single person, single votary of ISIS left, the fact remains that what the ISIS actually is projecting is one extreme version or view of Islam. Now, you can't, so it's an idea. You can't just negate that an idea like this. It can only be marginalized by the larger Islamic community all over the world. And that is where one needs somebody to take the initiative to bring this to bring most of the major Islamic countries together. The only one I can think of is the Organization of Islamic States, but they have not shown any interest in doing any such thing. So we are in a kind of a nebulous zone right now as to what happens with ISIS.
Sir, we keep hearing in the media about the Astana peace accords and, a peace settlement going forward in Syria. But don't you think, sir, as far as the main players, Russia, Turkey, and Iran, aren't their interests too divergent for any real peace to take place within Syria?
Well, the Astana process, which involved Turkey, Iran, and Russia, has been actually very positive. Let us not forget that all these processes feed into the UN process, um, because it has been able to very slowly, but very slowly, able to go ahead and give some flesh to UN resolution, UN Security Council resolution 2254 of 2015, which lays down a blueprint for what Syria, how we are going to deal with the problem of Syria. And they have been able to slowly bring into place a large number of uh, issues that arise there in from that resolution into greater focus. And I'm really happy to see that, in fact, January of this year, finally there was a meeting in Geneva of about under the UN representative of 45 different groups, including the government, to talk about a constitutional structure for Syria. There are no reports as to what exactly happened, but at least that thing has started, because in the end, apart from rehabilitation, apart from all that will be required, since many cities other than Damascus have been completely destroyed, uh, we will need a viable political structure which which would have to be based in some way on how you deal with uh, President Assad and what is the phase out time frame for him. That's one thing. The second is that the Asana process has actually brought peace on the ground, and in different areas set up a set up a way in which they've been able to slowly remove all the so-called terrorists, all the groups opposing Bashar Assad. And that is why most of them now are concentrated in the area of Idlib. And so now, once that Idlib thing is settled, and I think something may have started because it's since February 18 that this is going on, and nothing has happened. because Turkey was able to get more reprieve. But what Turkey was supposed to have done, which was to isolate the terrorist groups, it has not done for a specific reason, because they are keeping them to use elsewhere. I mean, Turkey has used these uh, some of these groups in places like Nagorno-Karabakh, where it is involved, and even in Libya. So this is the situation on the on how it looks after the Astana process.
Sir, finally, you say all this, and it is very positive. But sir, the fact is we have had 10 years of civil war in Syria. The major actors, as we started at the beginning of the interview, they're not going to go away. And you also mentioned the foreign media as well in your earlier talks, I had heard, playing a very negative role as far as Syria is concerned. So, while you say there is positivity, what do you think, if I may say realistically, would be happening in the immediate and perhaps midterm future?
Well, I think that you very correctly said that the role of the media has been extremely malign, especially Al Jazeera and Al Arabiya and so on. I don't know how this. This is, of course, uh, the thing is that both these, all these Arab media are creatures of their governments, and it's their governments that have to decide when they can deal with it. In fact, I have myself um, been witness to one of the fabricated incidents by Al Jazeera, which said that there was something going on in uh, Homs, and I happened to be in Homs at that time, and there was nothing going on. So these kind of thing, uh, but that was earlier on. It was in 12. But now the thing is that all these countries which are there have tried to attain their objectives, basically to get Assad thrown out and uh, do whatever it is. At the maximum time, there were about 1,000 to 1,200 different groups, with each one having a foreign master fighting the Assad government. Now that is now all done, and we have now seen 10 years of the Syrian crisis. Unless the major powers, that is the four permanent members who are there, want to start all over again, it makes no sense, because they've not been able to do it. Because, as you know, all this was done by all these countries without even a buy or leave of a constituted Syrian government. So that is the real tragedy. And today we can see that probably I hope that we are seeing the end game in Syria, but it can still happen that it will go in unexpected directions, especially if Turkey is not uh, bridled in what they are doing. Who is going to do it? Only the US can do it. Now, it is possible that President Biden might look at this.
Ambassador Abhyankar, thank you so much for your thoughts. And we will be looking at Syria, and hopefully peace will return in this war-torn region. Thank you once again, and I'm Ashwin Ahmad. Thank you so much for watching.